Father, we put our lives and our hope in you. and we trust you. We stand today filled with hope for tomorrow because of your grace and your precious gift that you gave. As we leave this place today with all of the thoughts and the memories and the joys of Lieutenant Aaron W. Allan's life, we ask you, Lord, that you go with us and that you keep ministering to us. We thank you, Lord, for the family and for the friends and for his law enforcement family and all the extended members of the community. We all need a touch from heaven today. We thank you, Lord God, that you receive him. And we thank you, Lord, that your hand of mercy is upon us now. We give you praise and glory and honor for all things. In Jesus the Christ's name we pray. Amen. Please remain seated if you would, and you will be dismissed in an orderly fashion.
hours that you've been spending with us here on Wish TV. We've been bringing you special coverage of the final farewell, the funeral services for Lieutenant Aaron Allan, who was shot and killed in the line of duty 9 days ago in the Southport community.
Services for the moment are completed just inside Bankers Life Fieldhouse. Many more things will still unfold over the course of this early afternoon, both in downtown Indianapolis all the way down to Southport, as the remains of Lieutenant Allan will go down there before then heading back ultimately to Crown Hill Funeral Home for the Graveside services. Thank you for being with us for this right now with Lauren Lowry. I'm Scott Sander. The more important member of our team today is Gary Woodruff. He is Deputy Chief of the City of Lawrence. We appreciate your time, your perspective today. Gary has several different ways that he knew of Lieutenant Allan and knew Lieutenant Allan, and also knows all too well what happens on days like today.
Gary, one of the things that we heard over and over again in this service, a beautiful service, you know, people who knew him, people who know of the sacrifice he made. One of the things that we heard repeatedly during the last couple of last week, and then also today, was his role as a person who had that hard exterior,
right, but
the soft inside, the teddy bear. Tell us about how you knew Lieutenant Allan.
Well, you see all that, and obviously many of us are like that. You know, you put up that exterior, but you know, if you care, you know, that doesn't take much digging through the surface to get through that and to see that soft side also. But don't mistake that for lacking in resolve when resolve needs to be there. So I think with that soft side, there's a lot of power there.
You know, that phrase teddy bear, which now we've heard almost said as often as Aaron or Lieutenant Allan now. It's like the third name that all of Central Indiana knows him by. But how did he get it? There was a sense of that was the reason why, but Pastor Chris Holland, who we've heard from several times during the ceremony, explained it during services. Take a listen to what he had to say.
Those who know this work of art the best see simply the teddy bear. The teddy bear is a story where, as tough as Lieutenant Aaron is, and as strong and powerful as he is, and as strict as he is about the law, he had such a caring side that even if your car needed a battery, he would take money out of his own pocket and go buy one and put it in your car. By the way, the battery is still in the car, still running today. I asked, I found out. So when he got back, someone said, "Oh man, Aaron, you're not a tough backside, you're just a teddy bear." And it stuck with him forever.
We saw that certainly in some of the pictures that we saw after the ceremony. Him in uniform, him doing the job, but also holding his little boy's hand and visiting with other children as well. Certainly had a soft touch to go along with when it needed to be a difficult and hard demeanor.
And sometimes you can pick up a nickname like that, even though it might not be your preferred nickname. They have a tendency to stick,
right.
And it sounds like it was appropriate in this case.
Well, and isn't that what happens in a family?
Right.
And
exactly
we talk a lot about it. We hear members of law enforcement talk a lot about it, about being a family. And we saw that in the members that spoke during the service, as well as the people who were there today honoring the life of Lieutenant Allan. Let's talk about how people give so much, and because of that shared sacrifice, you become members of the same family.
Sure, and it doesn't matter if what agency you're from, what color your uniform is, what state you serve in. You know, we're all part of that same brotherhood and sisterhood, and most importantly, part of the fabric of a community. You know, again, I said earlier that, you know, there's a saying that the people are the police and the police are the people. So we're part of the fabric of a community that is paid to perform a certain task, and of them that much is given, much is expected, and it's a calling.
The pastor mentioned that as well, a calling, a purpose in life. You referred to that several times, to that question of family, and that analogy is always made. These, you know, the brothers in blue, or brothers and sisters in blue, or green, or brown, or whatever uniform they wear.
Right.
And exactly what you said, the nickname that you want isn't always the one that sticks. And that's part of family, isn't it? You go hardest against the person you love the most. I've never seen more shall we say, competitive games than when a police and fire department fundraiser gets together to try to play basketball with smiles on their faces. Things get really, really rough. But then when they head out to that scene together, there's that instant unspoken, we don't need to solve anything, this is why we're here.
Right, yeah, it's all business then, but yeah, and some of that is our coping mechanisms and stress relievers as well. And you know, within law enforcement circles, like many other businesses and communities, you know, you go at each other pretty hard, but that's all done out of caring and love and understanding that you have shared experiences.
One of the more emotional presentations we saw was from a group of 4 men, the Marion County Sheriff's deputies,
Right.
that got up together. And we will play some of what they said a little bit later here as we wrap up the funeral service. But one thing that Sergeant Christopher Berry, who spoke on behalf of all 4 of them, one thing that he said was, of Lieutenant Allan, he was a cop's cop.
Right.
What does that mean?
Well, and you use the term "he got it," you know, and sometimes there's an intangible that you can't really describe succinctly anyway. That some people just get it, and Lieutenant Allan and others are people who they got it, a cop's cop, meaning that you're there to support your fellow officer. And talking to the Southport officers, they were saying that Lieutenant Allan would find out how you did things and make little suggestions on how to improve your what you were trying to do without making it seem like, oh, you did it wrong, you need to do it this way. He had the very innate ability to be able to offer little suggestions for improvement. You know, that's a real gift to be able to do that. So, you know, you say a cop's cop, I think those are some of the circumstances or the descriptors that can contribute to that.
Cops, deputies, firefighters, all those in uniform today, as we see filing out both there inside Bankers Life Fieldhouse, and that, if you will, is the lower bowl area. If you would go to a basketball game, that's the floor right there, and the seats were set up there. But then when they come out to what we decided it's called the pavilion.
Yes,
Plaza,
inside is the
plaza
pavilion.
and
Outside
pavilion
is the
area.
plaza, yeah,
So
yeah.
they'll line both sides of where the casket will be ushered then out to the hearse, which will then start the procession process. But it's almost unspoken and without any specific instruction that those folks who are wearing a badge of some kind would stand shoulder to shoulder with each other to get that done.
Sure, and there are organizers out there, particularly members of the Honor Guard, that will help organize the officers out there, get them into ranks, and we all know what to do at that point with the commands that are given when area is brought out to go to the hearse. But yeah, as the officers file out, there'll be some Honor Guard members out there in the plaza that will be providing some order there and helping get the officers lined up into ranks.
There was a point during the service that I know I found particularly touching. You know, you hear each of the speakers as they get up. They thank the family. They also say, you know, I'm sorry for your loss. And a lot of them, after they would exit the stage, would go and speak with members of the family. And we do have some video of one of these such times. There was a point where the Southport Mayor McClure walked over, and you see the wife right here in the middle of the screen, but you see the little boy right there. That's Aaron Jr. He's 5 years old. Watch here. He actually hands Aaron Jr. something. How important is it for the family when they have someone who's speaking on behalf of their family, speaking on behalf and you know, memorializing their loved one? How important is it that they would come back and just even speak to them or hand them something? How important is that?
Well, sure. I mean, sometimes those little mementos can be the most meaningful thing that you can receive. But you know, that interaction, that ultimately, you know, a police officer, a public servant, he's a husband.
Sure. Father, son.
Right.
And the Southport mayor, when people are invited to speak, they're often the dignitaries are extended the invitation. They may or may not have any contact with that person. At first, I didn't know whether the mayor was close with Lieutenant Allan or not. But then after he got through what are sort of the standard plaudits and ways to laud the person who we lost, he got into the personal things and he started to talk, and you're like, wow, he didn't just know him, he really knew him. He explained those inside jokes that the pastor had referenced. In other words, for some reason, the police force in Southport likes to throw candy at each other. Well, that's the great little bonding rituals that they have. Also said that they love fishing and hunting stories about, you know, that time that I took down a grizzly bear with duct tape and a paper clip.
Or the big fish story, and the fish keeps getting bigger.
Bigger and bigger.
Absolutely, and we all have those tales that we tell to each other that each time it's embellished just a little further, of course.
Yeah, and will continue to be. And the families, and to your point, the moment where the mayor gave that pin, if nothing else, signifies to them this is over, but this isn't over.
Right.
We're going to, and I think it was the police chief who said,
Right.
we're in your lives now. whether
Right.
you want
You're
us to
stuck
stay
with
or not."
us.
You're stuck with us.
It's something else that the police chief pointed out, and I'm not sure that a lot of people realize this. I frankly didn't realize that a lot of the Southport police community, I suppose, is volunteer.
Right.
And we know that Lieutenant Allan was one of the paid members of the team, aside from the chief, but no one else was.
Right.
This was a lot of people who truly became a family, and they were doing it on their own volition. They were not being paid for it.
There are police officers with many departments, ours included, that believe it or not, they do this for free. They're reserve officers. With Lawrence, we supply them their badge, firearm, radio, and the patches on their uniform. Everything else is purchased out of their own pockets. Now, they go through the same training that everybody else goes through, that every other law enforcement officer goes through, perhaps other than attending the actual law enforcement academy. But they attend the exact same training, the state mandated training, everything else that a law enforcement officer does to be certified in the state of Indiana. A reserve officer does that as well. And to the community we serve, they wouldn't really see or know the difference. In time of need, they call a law enforcement officer, whether it's a full-time or reserve. Frequently, there's no distinction.
You had, and if you weren't with us for the time that we had to visit before the funeral service, you had mentioned that you had worked with Lieutenant Allan in the past. You're in the city of Lawrence. He's currently in Southport, had worked in other places as well. Indiana State Fair is where you remember him from. There are many ways and places that the different law enforcement agencies across central Indiana, in Marion County, but not even just in Marion County, but they meet each other in these very different places.
Well, I say frequently that Indianapolis is a big, small town, and particularly in certain circles, and law enforcement is one of those. We all kind of know each other, and we get to know each other, especially the smaller entities, the Speedway, Beach Grove, Southport, Cumberland. We all know each other.
IMPD's the big brother.
Sure.
Right.
But you all kind of have that nodding acquaintance of,
Sure.
I got my town.
And we're all in it together, of course. But the smaller communities have a special affinity for each other.
Sure. Right now you're looking live at our feed from Bankers Life Fieldhouse of the final farewell for Lieutenant Aaron Allan. Just moments ago we saw inside what's considered the entry pavilion at Bankers Life Fieldhouse, where we saw many officers lined up, and then as people are relieved from their seats, they're going out one by one out into the pavilion, and then also out to the plaza outside. And the significance of that is that the hearse is waiting outside of the plaza.
Drew Blair and Joe Malillo are there as well. Let's join them right now. This is where the next step in today's events will happen. Drew and Joe?
Yes, good afternoon to you both. And for as much activity and bodies that there are outside right now, it's very quiet. As you can imagine, the moment is very somber continuing here. As people are lined up, you can see just blue uniform after blue uniform. And this is probably, Joe, the most activity that you have seen in the last couple of hours. I was inside during the service itself, and you stayed outside here, but you were not alone.
No, in fact, there were a few people outside, but like you said, kind of a somber scene. This is the most noise we've heard, is this helicopter above us and maybe us speaking at this point, but very quiet. The wind is blowing, and those flags over by the street, they're held by guys who come down to honor police officers like Lieutenant Allan, and they're from the Honor Guard. I was able to talk to them briefly about why they do this and what's the point. And you see people like that at events like this where they're kind of holding still and making sure that they're known, and it's an impressive scene to see as many flags as they brought earlier. They were here, they were still standing there, and I was able to talk to them about just their passion for police and wanting to make sure that the families knew how much they cared, and you could see why it's important to be impressive like that and be able to show support, because there are a lot of people here now, and especially from being inside, as you know, you heard how emotional everybody can get. And they were no different. They were very emotional about making sure that Lieutenant Allan's family saw them and made sure that they're here. So, but they were about it in terms of people outside. Everybody was mostly inside. We were able to kind of hang out and just see people passing by. A lot of people were just kind of like, what's going on? But as soon as they figured it out, they knew who he was. So that's good.
And so many of those sentiments that you just mentioned were echoed time and time again during the service itself. Some of the more moving moments that I witnessed, that not only that I felt personally, but you could just see that the crowd was feeling it as well, were during a lot of the musical tributes. Those were very touching to so many people. But then also the tributes spoken that were from the people who clearly knew Lieutenant Allan personally. That was the mayor of Southport. You could tell that they were not just colleagues, but they were friends. And then the same, of course, was true for four buddies. You know, four of his best friends took the podium. They were all members of the Marion County Sheriff's Office, and they spoke. One in particular did the speaking for the group of four, saying they remember Lieutenant Allan as a rock, as a sports fan, as a hunter, and especially a family man, as we've heard so many times.
But he could also go into a ladies' store and pick out a nice gift for his wife.
Yes, and the best friend a man could ever have. That was one of the quotes spoken by one of those members of the Marion County Sheriff's Office. We want to share more with you some of those words.
Allan gave us many gifts, not the monetary kind, but the kind that come from the heart. The last gift he gave me was his time. You see, I just had lunch with Allan about an hour before he was called to the scene of a car being flipped. I didn't know at the time, but it was our last meal. Our last time to talk, our last time together. But I think back to that lunch and I see it as a gift from God and from Allan, that I was one of the last people he spent time with. Right before he took off, I said, "Love you, brother. Be safe." Had I known he was leaving, never to return, I would have tried my best to stop him, but he would have gone anyway. That's what he did. He went to help someone. He lived his life to help and serve. So I think about the last time, those last moments. And God knew what he was doing. He wanted us to have one last conversation, one more chance to say, "Love you, brother. Be safe."
I'm back.
Yeah, you can hear the emotion there, obviously heartfelt from one of his best friends, but, you know, like you said, Lieutenant Allan probably would have gone anyway, even so, and that's the kind of guy he was, and that's what I talked to the pastor a little bit earlier before he started this morning, saying similar things. He spent a lot of time with his family, and that's the kind of guy he was. He's just going to show up.
And any other time outside of his family was spent serving his community, and not just police work, but so many volunteer acts, and that just was, again, echoed so many times during the service today about the kind of man he was.
It's very special to be able to hear word for word. Oftentimes we don't get this opportunity to be able to hear so many people talk and at such a high platform, and then to be actually, even though I was out here, I'm listening, and it feels very, very touching to be a part of it in any way.
And now, as the members of Central Indiana's community and Southport, of course, as well, but everyone here in attendance and those of you watching at home, and Scott and Lauren, I think we can all say that we feel like we now know Lieutenant Allan ourselves, just the way he was spoken so highly and so personally and deeply by everyone during the service today.
And as we look at your pictures, we're also seeing both inside and outside the plaza area from above. It looked like there were several officers deep now lining both sides of the route from, again, inside Bankers Life Fieldhouse out to where a hearse will be waiting, and at some point we'll then take him on the procession that'll take his body south to Southport, where he served, and then back where he'll be put in his final resting place. But to echo that, as we were listening to the officers from Marion County Sheriff's Department, and as Deputy Chief Woodruff was explaining to me how they knew him and all that, they kept calling him Allan, and they explained, well, we called him Allan. Some called him Aaron, some called him Lieutenant Allan, some called him Teddy Bear.
Right.
And on the job, they're different nicknames.
Sure, yeah, and some of them are earned, and some of them you want, some you don't. But,
But you're stuck with them nevertheless.
you're stuck with them nevertheless.
You know, when we looked at that live picture again, right outside behind Drew and Joe, as you were mentioning, several people deep, let's talk again about that significance, because there are, as you would imagine, hundreds of people outside lining together, standing shoulder to shoulder. And a moment ago, I had asked you, is this something that's predetermined? Is this something where, if you feel called to stand there, you just do it? And your response was simply, I just don't know that anyone wouldn't take that moment.
I can't imagine too many officers that were there in attendance are not going to line up outside and pay that level of respect as he's brought out and placed into the hearse for the
protocol
procession.
on something like this? And not all departments have different uniforms. Most have a dress uniform, and then some version of that they actually patrol in. What's the call? What's the order of business on a day like today?
Well, that's an individual department call. Some require ties for an event such as this. Some version of the uniform, usually a more dressier version. I was also told yesterday by the Southport officers that Aaron's not a real big fan of the Class A uniform.
Okay.
They more preferred the Class B, which is the embroidered uniform instead of all the metal and everything. So he said it doesn't feel right wearing this for Aaron because we should be in our Class B uniforms, but out of respect for the moment and the family and everything, that of course you're going to wear your dress your uniform.
Right. Well, and you think about it too, going back to the 4 Marion County deputies that spoke together, one of the things they did mention was they hunted together, they fished together, they camped together, and frankly they spent more time together than a lot of them spent with their own families. And so, I mean, I know I was in awe of the fact that they kept it together, being so close, and so close to him, and still being able to stay composed in that moment.
Well, and Aaron was part of this group at the state fair. They would literally bring a camper out there and camp on the grounds so they could get what little sleep they might get, and then be right back at it the next day, literally working morning, noon, and night to help keep fairgoers safe. And so, when they would go, they wouldn't go to their respective homes or whatever. They'd be camping right there, have a little campfire, and there was a little crew of them that did that and still are.
Isn't that just very state fair, isn't it?
Right.
They'll be having some memorial get-togethers, I'm sure, over the coming
I'm sure,
days
because
there.
the state fair started yesterday and it runs, for the next couple of weeks.
Yeah,
Sure.
1:37 right now, so we're well into the services, but far from the end for Lieutenant Aaron Allan of the Southport Police Department, killed violently about a week and a half ago. Story is well told, and we'll save the details of that and the investigation, of course, for other and more appropriate times. But right now, clearly the city is deeply in grieving, many people in very deep pain. We've heard over the course of the last hour and a half, 2 hours, so many stories about a man where few of us knew him well to begin with, and now feels almost like we know him very well.
And it's unfortunate that it's these situations before we know a person. It was that way on Wednesday with Deputy Chief Jim Waters from IMPD, and it feels the same way today. There are people who make a huge difference in our community, even if it's on the smallest level. But then most of us don't get to know that person until a day like today. Let's talk about that heart of a servant, that it requires to be a public servant to be an officer.
The term that keeps coming to my mind is it's a calling. Those of us that we couldn't imagine doing anything else. We're truly called to this line of work, and there are some challenges, but there are a lot of a great many satisfying moments as well, and to do it for any length of time at all. I'm in my 34th year now, and you're called to it, and it's going to end one day, but it's literally a calling. I don't know how else to describe it. You're called to it. There's nothing else you can imagine doing other than this or something along these lines.
The area that Lieutenant Aaron Allan served until just more than a week and a half ago was Southport, Indiana. Of course, inside Marion County, part of what we generally call Indianapolis, but it is a very proud community unto itself as well. Brittany Lewis is there with some of the people and faces that we will see when the procession makes its way down there. Brittany, good morning. Good afternoon, I should say.
Good afternoon, Scott. Yeah, I kind of just want to set the scene for you here about what is going to take place at the Southport Police Department. You can see behind me is that very growing memorial for Lieutenant Allan. We've shown that a lot over the past week and a half. You can see the teddy bears on there. He was called Teddy Bear. There are also some t-shirts from Franklin Central. He was a school resource officer there. But as people have been coming here today, they've been stopping by. There's a flag taped to the car that people have been signing. People have been out here for more than 3 hours. We got here about 2 hours ago, and people that we talked to said that they have even been here for even more than an hour before we got here. So you can see the line of people here is growing. They have people we talked to, really actually all of the people I talked to said they are not from Southport, but that they wanted to come and show their support. Many of them did not know Lieutenant Allan, but like all of us have been hearing so many wonderful things about him, about just what a wonderful man he was. And so they wanted to come out and pay his respects to him as well as his family. I've been talking to some people, a lot of people you might see with some signs out here. I saw a group of kids with some signs that said, Blue Lives Matter, we care about you, Lieutenant Allan, and your family. And those kids, I went over and talked to them. Her dad is actually an IMPD officer, this little 5-year-old girl, and she said that she worries about her dad going away to work and not coming home, and that she gives him a kiss every day. Other people just said that they simply wanted to come out here. One of those people is Erica Deem. You're going to hear from her right now.
It'll be sad, especially when he was trying to save a life and lost his own. And I sit and think about the kids not having a dad. That's the saddest part. And just him being as good as he was, we need more like him.
So the people have been lining the streets here, but as you can see behind me in front of the memorial, there are not any people, and that's done intentionally because this is where the processional is going to stop, and that is where they will be giving the 1042, the final call for Lieutenant Allan. Lieutenant Allan was a resident of Wayne Township, so the Wayne Township Fire Department is here, and they are going to have a speaker here so that everybody that has gathered here to pay their respects are able to hear that final call for Lieutenant Allan. So it's going to be a very emotional moment, but one that these people really want to hear, a very special moment to honor such a wonderful man. Scott and Lauren.
All right, Brittany, thank you. Of course, we'll visit with Brittany often throughout the how long this takes to unfold. And it may take quite some time, as so many people do want to pay respects. At Bankers Life Fieldhouse, the visitors, both police in uniform, family, friends, and those just from around central Indiana who wanted to be part of this, they are now, for the most part, out of Bankers Life Fieldhouse, and now they're preparing the casket for removal.
So we will, of course, be covering that for you. We are here for the duration, bringing you special coverage here on Wish TV, also on MyND-TV 23, because we believe it's very important. You know, it is an honor to honor the man who gave his life in the call of duty.
I was struck listening to the woman that Brittany had spoken with talk about the difficulty of the circumstances and how he passed away, basically doing something to try to help somebody else. Governor Holcomb, when he spoke, put it this way. He said his feet took him into harm's way. His eyes saw suffering and his ears heard a need for help, and he acted. And that action may be the reason why he's no longer with us. But his police chief, Tom Vaughn, who called him a friend before even an officer, said that his department will continue to do that, to run toward danger and toward accidents when necessary to help save lives.
It's always amazing to me that humanity seems to be the theme at events like this. In Brittany's live picture that we saw moments ago, there were people from all over central Indiana, not necessarily Southport, who came to support Lieutenant Allan. We know, based on the pictures here, based on the different uniforms, that was happening as well at Bankers Life Fieldhouse for the funeral. How does it touch you? Gary Woodruff, of course, with Lawrence Township Police. If you're able to say it, sure. How does it touch you when you see things like this?
So we know that there's a silent majority, I've said often, that fully supports our efforts. You know that moving forward. This is our country is built on policing by consent. In other words, we do what we do, by consent of the citizens we're in service of. So that's at the forethought of many of our all of our minds, all of us who serve. And displays like this just reinforce that for you. You see that silent majority coming out in support. It's heart-rending, but it makes you proud, and also lets you realize that we're all in it together. Even though we might be the paid public servants, or in some cases the unpaid public servants, right? The volunteer public servants. The community. The government is of, by, and for the people.
Anything surprise you during the ceremony? Anything you learned or gave you an extra extra smile?
I think hearing from the Marion County Sheriff's guys, I know most of those guys have worked with him out there at the State Fair, worked with Allan out there at the State Fair. I recognize their names from hearing them on the radio out there, and know a couple of them actually. And just hearing from them, I can't say surprised, but that Sergeant Barry made it through as well as he did.
Now that did surprise me.
That's pretty strong there. Even though he started to lose it a couple of times, his buddies helped him out.
Detected some teddy bear-like qualities in there.
Sure.
One of the things that we started to mention at 11 a.m. as we started our special coverage of the services today, we talked about the memorial team, the team of people who help make this happen. And I want to talk specifically about the fact that this casket, that his body, it was never left unattended from the moment that he was pronounced dead 9 days ago.
Right. There has been somebody standing watch with Aaron this entire time, regardless of where he was at, whether it was at the mortuary, whether it was at the coroner's office, at Crown Hill, wherever he has been, there's been somebody or somebody's, sometimes more than one, but at least one with him the entire time. It provides such a sense of comfort for the family, knowing that their loved one is not alone, even in the darkest moments of the night. He wasn't alone.
There is a live look in on, for the first time this hour, at Crown Hill Cemetery. Of course, Crown Hill has been pressed into service now twice in recent days for services for police officers from our community, and IMPD Deputy Chief Jim Waters earlier, and now Southport Police Lieutenant today. There you see one of the honors items put down to be part of the events today.
People, of course, are already there at the scene. Oh, now this is an important picture to show. Now this is the beginning of when the casket is taken from the floor of Bankers Life Fieldhouse. It takes a very slow and steady journey out into the entry pavilion of Bankers Life, and then outside of the plaza where it will be loaded onto a hearse. There's so much care that's taken, Gary, and we see the handling of the service taken with such great care, the handling of the casket with such great care. Let's talk about, go ahead.
The FOP Memorial Team just does amazing work, and they work with the officers that are serving as pallbearers here. Those are all Southport officers that are doing that.
2 sergeants, a captain, and 6 officers wearing those Class A uniforms, which you say maybe a few of them would have thought maybe a little overly formal for the man that they knew, of course, Lieutenant Allan. And it is now moving, and it is, as you say, we'll take a respectfully slow pace so as to honor the remains of Lieutenant Allan.
More on the memorial team, Gary. Not only do they respect, of course, Lieutenant Allan, but there's also a member who stays with the widow.
Right.
Let's talk about that piece of this. That person's never forgotten in this.
Right. The person that's assigned to the family, the officer that's assigned to the family, often will be a close friend of the officer and/or his family, and their responsibility is to meet the needs, the reasonable needs that can be met anyway, of the surviving family members. And if they turn to the officer and say, anything from a bottle of water to toys for the kids to keep them busy.
And this is an ongoing commitment. This is not for 1 week or 1 month.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't stop today. That commitment ongoing is the concerns of police survivors, helping the surviving family understand the process, the grief process. Many of them will choose to join those groups and give back what they have received.
Well, look at that. I counted 8 deep on the north side of that line that we'll watch with respect as the casket goes by. We heard Governor Eric Holcomb, and this would be, I believe, the first time in Indianapolis and Marion County he's been pressed into service like this as governor. There have been some difficulties elsewhere in the state so far this year as well, but he had some comments about the man that he probably well knew only through the stories of others, but said quite well what many people were thinking. Here are the comments from Governor Holcomb.
Aaron Allan is what love looks like. Certainly his hands helped countless others. His feet His feet took him into harm's way numerous times to protect his friends and his neighbors, to protect your family and mine. His eyes saw want and suffering, and he tried to better it. His ears heard sorrows, and he tried to right them. We will never be able to repay all the debts that we owe Lieutenant Allan.
Again, Governor Eric Holcomb speaking on the life loss and decisions of Lieutenant Aaron Allan on what would ultimately prove to be his final day.
Another one of the quotes from Governor Eric Holcomb, he said toward the beginning of his speech there at the funeral service, "Our hearts are heavy today and will be for many days to come. Indiana has lost a hero." And that seems, as it should, such a common theme on a day like today. And it seems also that public servants are often, especially of we see it with military, we see it with police officers and firefighters and other public servants. The word hero often comes up because they are doing something for the good of the people, for a person who needs help, and when they completely could turn around and go somewhere else. They didn't have to serve, but a man like Lieutenant Allan does.
And I could share with you and the viewers that the term hero is something you would not hear from us.
It's never a self-appointed position, is it?
Right.
Again, those are the officers. If you look closely at your screen, you may well be able to pick out the department of the people that serve you in any corner of central Indiana or beyond. Again, we have seen and heard from officers from all corners of the country who've come out to visit today. And
to clarify, not that that's not an inappropriate term here, of course it is, but that's not necessarily something that a law enforcement officer or any public servant thinks about as they're going about their daily duties. But in this case, of course it's appropriate.
Again, the pallbearers, Southport Police Department members, helping to push along the casket of Lieutenant Aaron Allan through the entry pavilion of Bankers Life Fieldhouse. In a moment, you'll see them step down the steps and the salute from other members as the casket passes. Gary, I notice in this picture specifically where we're seeing that red braid on the shoulder of many of the men standing right there in the center of our screen. Let's talk about the significance of that and what that means.
The red braid, in particular, on the Honor Guard members is symbolism. There's a lot of symbolism that goes into these events, these memorials, and it signifies that there's blood spilled in service of the community.
The carnations, as you mentioned, those red braids on the shoulders as well. You've talked before the service began about the sort of template that's been put together for events like this. This part of the ceremony always exactly the same, or can it also be altered depending on the life that we lost?
Yeah, typically for line of duty deaths, you'll see these fairly standardized for line of duty deaths. Ultimately, it's to the family's wishes. If they wish for something different, then that's what's done. But frequently for line of duty deaths, you'll see these same rituals, if you will, performed.
And you see the family following behind. We just got a quick glimpse of a 5-year-old son. You see him at the very top of the steps with the widow, of course, and other members following the casket behind. Let's talk about what's happening after this, because we're watching as the casket's carried through to be loaded into the hearse, but there is the procession after that, and there's quite a bit of significance that goes along with the procession.
Sure, the procession route is planned deliberately. They'll wind up down in front of Southport, the Southport Police Department headquarters, where the memorial has started there, and where a great many people are gathering even as we speak, and will continue to. Again, it's a great way for the public to pay their respect and honor to the fallen officer, and support for his surviving family as well.
Well, is that not profoundly difficult to watch? The little boy who probably can't process all of everything that's happening.
No.
Seeing Dad in that. Now the Southport officers resume their role as pallbearers.
Sometimes going up and down steps can be challenging for people who haven't practiced that considerably.
And who have extremely heavy hearts right now. Every heart there is heavy, but those are the men that served right next to him.
You can tell how much silence is there. You know, there's only so much that can be translated through video. This obviously is a visual medium, right?
Watch the salutes.
We want to see what's happening, but it's not to be understated, the silence there right now.
You have so many people gathered there, so many officers in particular, and sometimes the silence speaks louder than any words can.
And it is always, frankly, is odd to see Bankers Life Fieldhouse pressed into this service, but they've done a wonderful job, quite frankly, welcoming events like this and making them as painless as possible for the people who have to put together in such short notice.
They do a magnificent job. The Bankers Life Fieldhouse, the staff there, just they're amazing. And again, the memorial team working through the logistics of putting on a service of this nature through everything. It's just incredible, the work that they accomplish.
Let's take a moment of silence as the casket, the body of Lieutenant Aaron Allan is taken across the outdoor plaza there at Bankers Life Fieldhouse and placed into the hearse. For the last couple of minutes here, we've watched as the body of Lieutenant Aaron Allan was taken out in the casket across the plaza of Bankers Life Fieldhouse and into the hearse. The door has now been closed. Presumably in the next several minutes, the procession will begin. But first, there are literally hundreds of people outside Bankers Life Fieldhouse, right there along Pennsylvania, just paying their respects.
Lawrence Deputy Chief Gary Woodruff, you had a thought that we paused for a moment so we could watch that. What continue with your thought?
Well, Lauren was asking about the memorial flag there when they do get into the interment portion at the graveside. Members of the last department that had an officer line of duty death will carry that flag.
Oh, wow. I didn't know.
We will see that the symbol that's on the flag, and of course, for instance, your badge as well, the black band now with the blue line across it. Many departments across the state will wear that. Flags are lowered to half staff across Marion County for this as well. That's a common request and certainly something that the men and women in uniform immediately heed.
You see a lot of hugs right now from this picture. This is part of our Bankers Life Fieldhouse feed and that we've been using. They allow us to use during system ceremonies like this so that we can show you exactly what's happening. But it's amazing how much you don't hear in moments like this, how the silence truly is almost awe-inspiring.
It is 2 o'clock right now, which means that some of our viewers may just now be tuning in because they're hoping to see the Chicago Cubs. A nice mental break from a difficult week, and that's something that we certainly want to be able to provide you. But we feel strongly here as well that we need to continue our coverage because it didn't just stop with the service inside Bankers Life Fieldhouse. There'll be the procession down to Southport and then back up to Crown Hill Cemetery as well. So this is what we've decided to do. Hope it works for you. Here on Wish TV, we will continue, or rather I should say we'll switch you to that Cubs game, but on MyIndy TV 23, our sister station, we will continue coverage of this. Brenna and Phil will take you through that portion of all of this this afternoon as it continues to play out.
Deputy Chief Gary Woodruff is going to stay with us here on set to talk more about the significance as we move forward. But Gary, as always, we appreciate your time. We appreciate your perspective that truly only you and members of law enforcement would be able to give.
It's an honor to share. Thank you.
Hey, Lindsay.
All right, welcome back on this very somber Saturday afternoon here in central Indiana. Phil Sanchez alongside Brenna Donnelly. You are watching continuous coverage of Lieutenant Allan's funeral, and what an emotional morning it has been and afternoon it has been, Brenna.
It's been quite the experience. We've been really grateful to have some expert insight. Gary Woodruff, with the Deputy Chief of the Lawrence Police Department, has been very insightful, giving us information on really what this means from somebody from a police department's point of view. But we've also heard, as you may have seen, from several of his friends and family members, Lieutenant Allan's friends. It's been very touching to watch from this point of view, but of course eyes on the ground as well. The showing of people who are attending is impressive.
People from really all across the country, police officers, as they usually do, basically come to the city where a police officer is lost in the line of duty, which we are experiencing here today as far away as California.
Right.
We have multiple crews on the ground. Drew Blair and Joe Melillo has been outside Bankers Life Fieldhouse all morning long, where the body of Lieutenant Allan is being loaded and getting ready to move on to Southport, the Southport Police Department. I want to toss it over to them and get a kind of a perspective of what they're seeing. Guys.
Good afternoon, Phil and Brenna. The procession has actually it's starting, getting ready to start. The hearse is still parked outside of Bankers Life Fieldhouse at this moment, but you can see, if you have been joining us this afternoon, there were lines, 8 deep of uniformed officers, law enforcers from across the country, from every corner, lined up to watch as the casket passed us, and it has been loaded into the hearse, and now everybody is very quickly getting to their vehicles to then join the procession that will, as we know, go for quite a while, slowly down to Southport and then up to Crown Hill Cemetery. Been a very quiet, somber scene, as you would expect.
Yeah, and even so, I feel just weird speaking loudly now. Lieutenant Allan's body is literally within eyesight of us here, and they are getting ready to move on, but it was nice. It's nice to see that support, and people. When you say people from all over the country, I was able to speak earlier, and we have from Daybreak. The New York City police officers. Their job is literally to go around the country or to their own city, and unfortunately, they do that too often. So, it's just humbling to be able to be a part of this, because you never really expect anything other than sadness and somber, but people are actually kind of happy too, because you want to remember him too as that teddy bear, as that guy that's going to be jumping into action, as the guy at the state fair, and because if that doesn't put it into perspective, as the state fair kicks off this weekend, I don't know what does. So.
Teddy Bear, one of the nicknames given to Lieutenant Aaron Allan, as we heard during the service. And while so many strangers were here today, many are leaving as if they feel they know someone they never met before, but know Lieutenant Allan personally now because of the words spoken during the service. Many by those who knew him personally, not just as a colleague, but as a friend. Included in one of the more moving moments is when the mayor of Southport, Russell McClure, spoke. Here's his words now.
I didn't lose an officer. I lost a friend. Aaron loved his wife and his children, hunting and fishing, and police work. And I think it was pretty much in that order.
And
clearly an emotional moment there for him. Very difficult to get through those words, but touching.
I don't know how else to, that's his guy, at this point, and we're going to continue to, just kind of keep an eye on here, because they have yet to leave for Southport at this point. Clearly everybody's kind of getting ready and back in the cars, but I was able to talk to the pastor too right before he got in his vehicle to kind of head around, and he just looked exhausted. If that's somebody that's put a lot of effort out today, he did a great job, in my opinion, just kind of keeping everything, and he had a lot to talk about, and for good reason. Lieutenant Allan there's a lot of stories to be had. So, and like the pastor said, he said it was like he knew him. Even just getting to know his family, it was as if he knew him. And what better way to honor Lieutenant Allan than to have everybody who knew him, and then on top of it, have somebody like the pastor get to know him that quickly.
Yeah, certainly an emotionally exhausting day and several days for many involved in our community, especially in Southport, as you just heard, the mayor leading the charge in that community that's now, unfortunately, as Deputy Chief of Lawrence Police Department, Gary Woodruff, said during Daybreak today, Southport now joins a fraternity no law enforcement department wants to join. This is the first officer of that department to be killed in the line of duty, and unfortunately we have seen this time and time again across the country, and too many times. Once is too many. Phil and Brenna.
Drew Blair and Joe Melillo outside of Bankers Life Fieldhouse as we continue to take a live picture from that scene right now. Thank you, both of you. Gary Woodruff, they just mentioned, sitting with us once again, working all day long, diligently. Thank you for being here with us, Gary. We can't say it enough. You are really a pillar in this community in times like this.
It's an honor to serve. Thank you.
I can imagine a lot of folks are watching this program or watching this video and learning for the first time really what goes into a funeral for a law enforcement officer, especially one killed in the line of duty. You expect a large showing at a funeral, one such as this, which we have seen, but you also expect perhaps people to line the procession route as this vehicle moves down to Southport.
Absolutely. It's a great way for the public who perhaps chose not to attend or for whatever reason couldn't. Right. They can still pay their respects and recognition for the officer and his family. And again, I'll throw in one more reminder about that also. If people along the procession route cannot park in the roadway, can leave that procession route open for the procession, that would be very, very helpful to the officers driving along the motorcade route.
Without a doubt. So let's go over what the procession route will be from here if we can. We do have it printed here on our screen, on our right here at our desk. It's north on Pennsylvania from Bankers Life to Washington. You see it here. West on Washington Street to Capitol Avenue. South on Capitol to McCarty. East on McCarty to Madison Avenue. South on Madison to Banta. East on Banta to Derbyshire. And then south on Derbyshire to the Southport Police Department, where, Gary, the 1042 will be observed, correct?
Right. That's always one of the most heart-rendering moments. Lieutenant Allan has technically still been considered on duty through all this, and that's the 1042 is police code for going off duty. Right. And this will be that final call. It's always very heart-tugging for everybody, and that radio broadcast will be made throughout Central Indiana.
Right.
Does the family play any role in that 1042 ceremony? I mean, I'm sure they're standing by as close as possible to watch that experience.
The officer that is assigned to the family, of course, will have their radio on inside of their vehicle. And I understand the Wayne Township Fire Department is also going to have some speakers set up there at the Southport Police Department, so that radio broadcast can be heard by everybody that's attending there, as Lieutenant Allan was a resident of Wayne Township.
So after that 1042, obviously Lieutenant Allan's body will make its way to Crown Hill Cemetery, where we do have multiple crews standing by. Our Elizabeth Choi is at Crown Hill right now as we speak. Elizabeth, what's the scene like out there?
Well, Phil, we're out here waiting for the Graveside service. Obviously, that is not going to happen until the procession leads its way here. The procession just getting started, so that could be another hour to 2 hours, and that's just my guess. I'm going to step out of the way and let you take a look at the things behind me. You can see there's a special casket cover, and I don't know how good of an angle my photographer can get of that, but you have Lieutenant Allan's picture on it, the American flag with the blue line through it, so a special cover for his casket. There's seating, presumably for his family. Still, again, a good amount of time before people are set to arrive here. We have several state troopers in place. There's going to be a special graveyard service that'll include the 21 gun salute, taps. We could expect the flag from the casket to be folded. We're told that Amazing Grace will be playing, and some other traditions such as that. Of course, we'll be out here. We'll be updating you as soon as the family and mourners arrive.
All right, Elizabeth, thank you very much. We'll talk back with you in a little while.
You know, one of the more impressive scenes about what Elizabeth just described are the headstones in the background of that shot to show other fallen officers and fallen servants of the community who are interred there. One thing that has crossed my mind as I've been watching this is how police departments specifically, but also other law enforcement agencies, prepare for something like this. Obviously, they receive training. They understand that when they go out into the field, they're risking their life for the safety of others. I'd love to hear from your point of view, Gary, how training might prepare officers for an experience like this.
There's been significant investment in learning about the dynamics of these situations. And departments, the Indiana Law Enforcement Academy even has made significant investment, I'd say in the last 15 years or so, a little longer than that maybe, in helping officers and their families cope with these matters. Even beginning at our experience at the Academy, Dr. Paul Weitzel does a family day where families of officers will come out and listen to him speak. And many agencies, especially ones who've experienced fallen officers, will participate in the FOP Critical Incident Response Team and the FOP Memorial Team, including the Honor Guard and the police officer support teams. There's just so much more investment made in that area now. It helps families of officers understand what they're going to experience, and helps guide departments when they are affected with a line of duty death. It really gives a sense of order to what otherwise is chaos.
So let's delve into that a little bit, because he is the 72nd police officer killed in the line of duty nationwide this year. Keep in mind, this is August. I believe there were more than 150 last year nationwide. This happens far too often.
Far too often. On average, there's about 150 law enforcement officers killed in the line of duty each year here in the United States, and that's, of course, that's 150 too many on average.
Right.
But departments are doing better at understanding, again, the dynamics of that. Here in Indiana, the Memorial Team has really created a template for other states, other memorial teams to follow when it comes to memorializing an officer, providing support for the affected department, other officers, and in particular the surviving spouses and or family members. They've really done just tremendous work. So many people have invested in that. It's amazing what all they do.
We were talking the other day when we were in the newsroom. You and I have done this a number of times here over the past maybe decade or so. Again, far too often. And we were saying that when you go to work, obviously this is a tough job. You know what you're getting yourself into. You know the risks. You don't expect to lose your life, especially in a situation where he was trying to help the victim of a car accident.
Sure. And yeah, and then what lessons do we take away from that? I know we don't want to dive too deep into the circumstances
the investigation
that led to us being here, of course.
Aspect, right.
This today should be about Lieutenant Allan and his family, but you know, we analyze situations, and it's one of the things that we are coming to terms with is we're going to continue. I think Chief Vaughn said it best. We're going to continue to respond to these, and that's part of what we accept. And you don't expect something like this to happen, of course, but it's part of what we understand we may be getting into when you swear on. I've said it many times over the last few days. This is a calling for law enforcement officers.
Certainly
if you're doing
is.
it well and you're doing it right, it's a calling. It's something you can't imagine really doing anything else.
Yeah.
It's a calling, and of course the word sacrifice rings true even more profoundly on a day like today than it does in other ways. At that funeral, there was a sergeant who spoke specifically about the sacrifice that Aaron Allan gave to his community, potentially saving many lives in the process.
And the person he was, the type of person he was. Take a listen.
Allan gave everyone a chance. His life was about helping and loving others. He had a way of bringing different people from different backgrounds together. He accepted people for who they were. He judged no one. He was a cop's cop. He respected the law and lived his life by the code of the law. He was a true community officer. He loved and supported his community. It was his honor to serve with everyone. He was a man of his word. He helped people, like the time he bought a car battery for a lady who needed one, or waited 2 hours for another lady to get out of traffic court to give her car keys back, which she had lost. He would check up on people if they were down on their luck. Allan was there to help them or to cheer them up.
Emotional moment at Bankers Life Fieldhouse earlier this afternoon. It was hard to watch. It was tough to watch. I mean, you could not watch this memorial service and have a dry eye. It was very difficult.
It shows how much impact he had on the community. And, you know, we sometimes see a trend with disasters or tragedies like this. For instance, 9/11. When that happened, folks, of course, you know, were very concerned for their personal safety, their country's safety. And some would think that that would encourage people to shy away from law enforcement or from emergency response as they see such a serious disaster. But of course, the trend is that we see an increase in patriotism, an increase in desire to support our civil servants. Sure. Gary, have you seen that in the last week?
Oh, you see that as an ongoing trend. I mean, how many people enlisted, you know, in the armed forces?
Sure.
After 9/11.
Yep. It's almost had the reverse effect, almost, you know, in a sense. And to your point, I'm sure there are things that happen on a daily basis where people stop and say thank you to you. And contrary to the narrative that is out there.
Sure, and yeah, that does happen regularly, and you're always thankful for it. But I know for me and many other officers, we'll say the same thing right back. You know, we'll thank you, and you know, people don't have to take the time out of their day to do that. And we're also focusing on more opportunities for community engagement, you know, so that people see law enforcement officers as who we are. We're human beings.
Sure.
You know, behind the badge is the same human being as anybody else.
Right.
And I've said it a few times here. There's a saying that we have: the police are the people, and the people are the police, meaning that we're all in it together.
Yep.
In the news world, we have, of course, a calendar of events that we look forward to, and it was almost startling from the news point of view to see this tragedy happen and then see National Night Out just a couple of days later on our calendars. And we were eager to cover that event with more enthusiasm than we had in the past, because this is such an impactful event, and that's an opportunity for folks to vent their emotions and share their emotions as a community. In Southport and Homecroft, where I specifically attended.
Right.
That was something else.
That really was.
Yeah, that was very emotional.
We had our best national night ever that night. And, you know, I mean, every agency, I think, considered, you know, should we go ahead and do this in light of these circumstances? And after talking to the Southport officers, the collective answer was, oh, yeah.
Because that's something he loved. Lieutenant Allan loved that National Night Out.
He was all about National Night Out.
Right.
And I've worked at least 17 of them in a row now, and they're very enjoyable, and you know, to interact with folks like that, outside of our normal calls for service, outside of people that we're trying to assist in crisis. And when I say we, I mean the collective we as law enforcement officers, especially the ones that are out there doing it on the front line every day. As a chief, my duty is to support them, give them the tools that they need to be successful, and frankly, to get out of the way and let them do it.
Right.
You know, the officers, the frontline officers, the ones out there doing the job every day, and they're the ones that should be getting the thanks, and we try to do that regularly.
He seemed like the officer who volunteered a lot, especially. We heard about his role in the state fair, which just began yesterday. We heard about his role working for the School of the Deaf, working for different school townships. He seemed to be the kind of person to raise his hand right away as soon as something was needed in the community.
So I've worked at the state fair for many years also, and remember when he started out there, and on the radio every 5 minutes it seemed like, yeah, this is Aaron. You know, I'm here. If there was a need on the Monon Trail, for instance, you know, this is Aaron Allan. I'm right here. And then 10 minutes later, if there was a need over on Fall Creek or on 42nd Street, yeah, this is Aaron. I'm right here. You know, how do you do that?
Right.
And he was that officer that seemed to be able to put himself at the right place at the right time and with the right response, and that's a really special gift.
Hero is a word that we throw around quite often sometimes, and sometimes it's well deserved and other times it's not. This, calling him a hero, is very well deserved.
Yeah, I mentioned it earlier, and I don't want to leave the viewers with an inappropriate impression. That's a term that we would not use for ourselves at all. If somebody else wants to say that, especially in this particular circumstance, I think that's appropriate.
Tell you what, I'll use it. I'll use it all day long, and I know somebody else who will as well, and that is the mayor of the community that he served, the Southport mayor. Take a listen.
Lieutenant Allan is a true hero, a man who was dedicated to his family and dedicated to his work as a police officer. Aaron was an excellent example of what a law enforcement officer should be. He was competent, dedicated, tenacious, and tough. And speaking to many former and current colleagues, the overriding theme is the same. Aaron was a competent, dedicated professional. But he also could be compassionate, caring, earning him a nickname, Teddy Bear. We were fortunate to witness Lieutenant Allan's dedication by his saving lives and his compassion through providing for other people he did not know.
It's the governor of Southport there using the word hero very generously. We also heard the governor of Indiana use that word as well, very emphatically. And that hero is still at Banker's Life right now, waiting to move on to that procession. You can see the live video here on the screen, as well as the crowd that had been there has dispersed. Of course, I imagine they moved to the procession route itself to watch this scene unfold.
Sure, many of the officers are headed to their vehicles, and I think you see the much of the procession starting there, already started, and heading along the procession route. So people will be seeing the law enforcement vehicles coming through,
right,
even as we speak.
Are you surprised by I'm sure you're not, because of how many times that you've seen this happen. Again, far too often it has happened. But there seems to be an extremely large amount of outpouring of support today.
I think there are several reasons, and I think the fact that this is coming on, the immediate aftermath of Chief Waters.
Deputy Chief Waters, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that kind of doubled, tripled, quadrupled the level of emotion there.
Right.
And nothing intended to anybody, to other agencies. Other agencies are big brothers, and I am big brothers and sisters at IMPD. But there's something about the smaller communities that really forms a special bond.
Right, absolutely. You know this very well. It's a part of community policing, which is what Deputy Chief Waters actually stood for as well.
It was all about that.
And Lieutenant Allan as well.
Right, and many of us are, and I mean, IMPD employs that in a great way for a large organization.
Right.
They're nationally recognized at doing that. There's a special affinity, I think is the term that comes to my mind, from the other entities, from Lawrence Speedway, Beech Grove, Southport, Cumberland.
Well,
we have a special bond.
Yeah.
It's something we've echoed, of course, that it has happened too often. The logistics are becoming even more seamless than they were at the start of some of these experiences. And one thing that we were talking about briefly was the kind of logistics that go into this. You think this is a big day in this family's life. It's a very long day, a very taxing day. But there are people who are dedicated just to meeting the family's needs. Tell us a little about those logistics.
There's a whole cadre of people with of supporters with the memorial team that will have food obtained, prepared, donated for the family, for the officers that are attending. This is a very long day. They still need to eat, drink, and use the comfort facilities.
Sure.
So those things cannot be forgotten. And so literally in their vehicles and law enforcement vehicles, they're provided food along the procession route. I remember when we were in our time of need. You get in your car and there's a couple little bags with I think I had a PB&J in there and a few other things, just to sustain you for the day. And it is amazing the things that the memorial team are able to pull off.
Well, how poetic is it that the community is coming out to support this officer killed in the line of duty, and they're lending their heart and their support, and at that same moment, those police officers and logistical supervisors are providing for the community members who are coming for them.
And there's officers that are out there serving right now, responding to the calls for service, now not just in Southport. IMPD and the Sheriff's Department are helping backfill for them. Our agency and a great many others, again including the Sheriff's Department, are backfilling in East District and Southeast, and making sure that the calls for service are answered and the public remains served and protected.
Again, you're looking at a live picture outside of Bankers Life Field House, usually a very busy street in Indianapolis, and it's busy even on a Saturday afternoon, of course. Too busy this week as we've had 2 police funerals in this location. But if you see right there in the center of the screen that the hearse carrying the body of Lieutenant Allan is still waiting to begin the processional. There's a closer look at it with its guards surrounding it. That will head down to Southport Police Department for a very important tribute, as this officer was a Southport police officer, but as bonded well into the family of IMPD. And to have a facility large enough to gather the people who are willing to show their respects and say their final goodbyes. We're grateful that Bankers Life Field House has been available for this experience. The procession should start momentarily as he heads down to Southport and then back up to be interred at Crown Hill.
Yep, and Stacy, his wife, put out a statement earlier today that just kind of sifting through it right now, and one of the parts of that statement that really seems very interesting to me is she says we continue to live every day like no other, and couldn't wait to experience our next adventure, talking about their relationship. We have so many memories together. It was as if God knew he would call him home early. It's hard to read that with a dry eye. Man, what an emotional morning / afternoon / couple of days, almost a week and a half now it's been for that family,
well,
and
it's
for everybody else.
It's absolutely unimaginable for that family. And of course, they've asked for privacy, and as far as I understand, have received it. But they have issued that statement, the quote that Phil just read, of course, giving some of their perspective on this issue. Because I can imagine folks sitting at home watching this thinking, what would I do? What on earth would I do in this situation? Or how can I help someone that I may know be in this situation? The kind of support needed at this time. Of course, you put this on social media, you instantly just fill comments of people saying they're praying for the family, they're hoping for the best, and encouraging any law enforcement officer they come in contact with gratitude.
To Brenda's point, Gary, I heard you earlier say that Indianapolis is kind of like a big small town. And this is a community that's very patriotic, comes together in moments like this. And that's certainly what we've seen over the past week and a half here.
Sure, the community support throughout Marion County, the contiguous counties, central Indiana, is just amazing. There's that silent majority that really roars to life when events like this occur, and I can't imagine how uplifting that is.
Yeah. Nick Notario, I believe, right?
That's right. Yeah, we have team
Cemetery
coverage today, so we're going to send it over to Nick Notario and find out what's happening over at Crown Hill Cemetery. Good afternoon, Nick.
Good afternoon, Brenna. You know, emotional there in the studio. Very emotional and kind of eerie right now as we're waiting for the procession to eventually make its way outside of Crown Hill Cemetery. Just moments ago, you could hear bagpipes playing off in the distance, setting the scene as to what will happen. About 10 minutes ago, we had around 100 officers with their lights making their way right here inside the cemetery. You don't see a lot of action right here, but let's just go ahead and show you. This is down 34th Street. Just take a look. We've been here since 1 o'clock, and people have started to make their way out here. I mean, we're still possibly a couple hours away from the procession coming down 34th Street, but there are people out here sitting, standing, waiting for him. And then you notice down there, you can see a giant flag. That there is the Garrison flag. So eventually the procession will make its way down 34th Street, heading right toward the camera there, and make its way to the cemetery. You might notice there are people walking in the road. They've shut that down. Now they're just going to wait for Lieutenant Aaron Allan to make his way to Crown Hill Cemetery, where the procession will come under the Garrison flag there, make its way on 34th Street up into the cemetery. Now here I want to show you just a quick rundown out in front of the cemetery, what we're going to see when the procession ends right here. We're just going to turn the camera. So what's going to happen, they're going to make their way under the Garrison flag. The hearse and the procession will stop right here. This is where we're going to have a next part of the ceremony where Lieutenant Allan's body will be transferred from the hearse to a wagon. They're going to have a bunch of motorcycles that are lined up right here where I'm standing, and then once that transfer happens, he's then going to make his way up that wagon all the way into the cemetery there. Now you notice there's a bunch of American flags, red, white, and blue, all outside of Crown Hill. I look up, it's about 500 feet where eventually he's going to be laid to rest, and the whole street there is lined with even more American flags. You've got bagpipers right now walking the grounds, getting ready as we await the procession As for the people that came out here, there are some people that live nearby, but there were some people that I talked to that came out from Homecroft, Southport area. They wanted to actually come and be here for this final point. And I want to let you know, if you do want to come out yourself, if you're interested to see this part of it, just be mindful that they have closed off some of the traffic, but there are still plenty of ways to come down here and give your final respects to Lieutenant Allan if this is the spot that you want to do it. And we're out here waiting. We're going to go down, chat with some more people about why they came out here, but we're going to be out here for the duration of the procession. Like I said, this is where it'll all go down, probably a couple of hours. We have motorcycles lined up, and then this is where we're going to have the transfer from the casket onto the wagon, which will be wheeled into his final resting spot. Brennan, Phil.
Nick, thank you for that update. We'll be sure to check back as news develops there. We appreciate it.
Something we just learned is that once his body does make it to Crown Hill Cemetery, the Gordon Pipers will be playing, Gary. And you just telling me this, that Lieutenant Allan's dad was a founding member?
Yes, that's one of the things that the family did ask us to make a specific point about, was that Lieutenant Allan's father was one of the founding members of the Gordon Pipers.
Right.
And the Gordon Pipers are just so well known here in the Central Indiana area for everything they've done at the 500 and other events.
Right.
So they're going to play a prominent role in the graveside services.
Well, the role of music in these ceremonies is very important. Even before National Night Out, I should say, in Southport, they held a remembrance for Lieutenant Allan. And I was there live that evening, and as we were waiting for something to happen, we just saw folks lined up along the one-way. All of a sudden, we hear this bagpipe just trumpeting out into the air, and all of a sudden, in files this large procession of bagpipers, and I get soft at bagpipes. They're absolutely powerful instruments, especially singing our nation's hymns. It was just powerful, and you could tell that folks really understood that musically you can give a tribute to somebody in this position, as well as verbally as they gave remembrances. But the music stuck out, I think, to a lot of people, and it will today.
Oh, sure. The power of music is well known. It affects you in a great many ways. Can affect all of us in a great many ways. And the Gordon Pipers are they're masters at their trade for sure. And the fact that they have a direct family connection to Lieutenant Allan, that makes it even all the more just marvelous that they're participating.
Just poignant, absolutely perfect that they're able to make that connection in time for an event like this.
Definitely.
So we continue to look live on the left side of your screen outside of Bankers Life Fieldhouse as the procession is about to get rolling here soon. I guess a lot of people who are maybe tuning in continuously throughout the day kind of wondering what's taking so long right now. Gary, can you walk us through what is going on and how are we going to get rolling here soon?
Yeah, just moving the sheer amount of officers that attended to their vehicles, getting them into their vehicles, and then getting those vehicles onto the procession route. Just by the sheer numbers, that takes time, and that's what you're seeing now. And again, this is all in tribute to Lieutenant Allan and his family. The idea is that the pain divided, pain shared is pain divided.
Now, folks who may be on the procession route who are wondering what they're going to see first, can you tell us a little of the order of events or the order of people and vehicles in this procession, kind of what that is usually looking like?
Yeah, the attending officers all are going first, and then the hearse carrying Lieutenant Allan will be towards the end of the procession, I should say. And it's all done purposefully once they arrive at the interment site. Again, just getting the officers parked out of their vehicles and to the route where the caisson will take him to Graveside, to his final resting place, and then gathering there. Again, just moving people, getting vehicles parked and people moved. That it just takes time.
Yeah. When I was driving in today, this afternoon, I come up 70 and I come up north through downtown. I take Meridian straight up to us here on Wish TV, which we sit on Meridian. I made a kind of a right turn on Monument Circle, kind of just to see what was going on. It was while the memorial was going on, and you could hear a pin drop outside of Bankers Life Fieldhouse. It was amazing to see the amount of people that were outside, number one, and also just how quiet it was.
Sure. And we see that throughout, even at the National Law Enforcement Memorial.
Well, the sheer numbers that you mentioned, Gary, we can start to see. This is a live picture here at Madison Avenue. You can tell law enforcement heading to their specific place along the procession route. And there are people, of course, on the sidewalk that just stepped out of the screen here that are already lining the procession route. But you can see the sheer numbers of law enforcement, lights ablaze, prepared to help Lieutenant Allan depart.
And having been in those processions, it's one of the most amazing moments. And here we see the hearse moving.
Yep. Starting to take off. Lieutenant Allan's body now being moved from Bankers Life Fieldhouse on its way to Southport PD.
And we mentioned the pin dropping. This will be a very reverent ceremony that will happen. It'll take quite a bit of time to get down to Southport, but it gives people an opportunity as they line the procession route to pay their final respects. And it gives law enforcement officers to stand at attention as Lieutenant Allan passes, which I'm sure is an honor for those who are experiencing it.
Carrie, since you just mentioned that you've been a part of these processions, what's it like when you pass these people on the road? When you're a part of the procession, you see them standing out there, whatever the weather may be, just saying their final goodbyes.
Yeah, it's amazing the people holding, everything from American flags to their children, memorializing the moment. And I know, in the ones that I have been in, you're just amazed at the length of the procession and the number of people that come out to pay their respects, especially as you pass by certain areas of the community. People will put signs out, businesses will have put signs out, and that outpouring of support and love is just it's amazing.
Is there a state of standing, I guess I should say, recommended for folks along the procession line? Should they cover their hand over their hearts, send salutes, just stand at rest?
Whatever feels right. We see a great many people do that. A lot of people will remove their caps or put their hand over their hearts. I guess whatever feels reverent and respectful to them. And I don't know that there's any specific protocol. You'll see veterans who oftentimes will be rendering a salute, a military style salute. So they've earned the right to do that.
Yep.
Impressive.
Our Brittany Lewis is standing by at the Southport Police Department as we speak. She's been there this afternoon. This is, of course, where Lieutenant Allan's body is currently on its way to. Brittany, what are you seeing out there?
Well, Phil, hello there. I want to give you just a look of all the people who are here. We got here around 11:30. There were people who had been here long before us. This line of people stretches all the way down Derbyshire, the street here in front of the police department. The processional will come from that direction, and then they will be stopping here in front of the memorial that has been growing since the passing of Lieutenant Allan last Thursday. You can see that just within the last few minutes here, they've actually placed a portrait here of Lieutenant Allan here. So there aren't any people here in front of the memorial, and that has been done intentionally because this is where the processional will stop. And this is where the final radio call for Lieutenant Allan, that 10:42 final radio call, will take place. And we do know that the Wayne Township Fire Department is here with their truck. They're going to use their speaker to broadcast that final radio call so that all of the people who have gathered here are able to hear that. And I want to show you in the other direction just how many people are here as well, just so you get the full scope of all the people who wanted to come out and show their respects. Many of the people I talked to did not know Lieutenant Allan, but they knew and have heard so many stories about just what a wonderful man he was. Many people are from Southport, but many people are not. I've talked with people who came from Shelbyville, a family from Shelbyville, 5 kids, all holding different signs. They wanted to show their support. I talked with a police officer who came here from Montgomery County. He actually went through police training with Lieutenant Allan. He said he didn't know him well, but that he wasn't able to go to his funeral, and so he wanted to make sure that he paid his respects in some way. So he came here to where this processional will come and where that 10:42 final call will take place. We've also seen police officers from several other different departments here as well, Carmel, Beech Grove, IMPD, and we're also seeing several police families. I talked with a wife of an IMPD officer as well as the daughter of an IMPD officer, and this is what she told me about the fear she has for her dad being a police officer.
Show our support and to show the kids that we can stick together and as a community, we can get through anything as a community.
And you probably know what it's like to have your husband go to work and kind of worry.
Yes.
What was it like for you to hear when he had 2 kids and that he died really going to save someone?
It's tough. You feel guilty sometimes knowing that we're there to tuck our kids in every night and now his kids won't have their dad to put them to bed every night.
I feel sad for the little boy because his daddy died.
And your dad's a police officer?
Mm-hmm.
So tell me...
That's why you have to give your daddy kisses every day.
Do you give him... That little girl, just 5 years old, knowing the potential danger that her dad faces every day as a police officer, and of course that mom there, her mom speaking about just knowing what it would be like to lose her husband, and just knowing that Lieutenant Allan is a dad as well as a husband. So as you can see here, lots of people lined up waiting for this processional to take place. We will be here and we'll bring you that final 1042 call live when they do it here.
Brittany Lewis, live for us this afternoon outside of Southport Police Department. Brittany, we'll talk back with you in a little while. Thank you very much. That little girl.
It's a day that pulls at your heartstrings.
It really does.
When you hear the reaction from the community.
He left for work, kissed his wife, kissed his kids, and unfortunately never came home. Unconscionable.
He had quite the position, too. We've learned that in the Southport Police Department, that's mainly a reserve police department, we learned that in 2017, he became the first full-time paid officer other than the chief of police. So obviously a well-known face in the community, somebody who was dedicating his life quite literally, but also his day-to-day life to the people there. And you can imagine the connection that Lieutenant Allan would have with Chief Tom Vaughn, of the two of them being the full-time officers in the Southport community. Chief Vaughn did speak at the funeral and was able to give some very personal, important remarks that I think brought the message home for a lot of the people who were listening who maybe didn't know Lieutenant Allan personally.
We have some of those remarks right now. Take a listen to this.
On Monday night, I had the honor of me and some of the officers were able to go to Kokomo, Indiana to meet an impressive child named Malachi. Malachi heard the news about Aaron and just wanted to show his support. He set up a lemonade stand to raise money for Aaron's family. He also trained me how to make lemonade. I wasn't doing it right. This is just one of the many acts of kindness that has been shown to us in this past week.
That was the chief speaking, sharing a memory that he had with Lieutenant Allan himself. And we've heard several memories, and we've got a closer picture of who this man was, both on and off duty. And it's impressive to see, we were talking earlier about the word hero, it's impressive to see how he was able to be a hero in the lives of community members and his family, and then of course in his police department, to stand firm in any situation that might come his way.
Yeah, we didn't know him before. We certainly know the person he was now. We've gotten to know him pretty well here over the past week or so. Gary, talking about Chief Vaughn as well, what's it been like, and can you imagine what he's been going through? He's been pretty strong during all of this.
Well, the chief is looked to rally your department, but he's going through the grieving process as well. Him and Aaron were very good friends as well as co-workers. So he's done extraordinary. Really, the things that Southport PD has accomplished over the last few years in particular has really been impressive. Their reserve program, most of their officers are working as volunteers for little or nothing, not paid, and then they're starting an Explorer program. There were additional reserve officers that were at the viewing yesterday. There are probably 8, 10, 12 of them that are in training, ready to become reserves for them also. The work they've done there is just it's terrific, and the community is growing, and then they have Explorer. They've started an Explorer program also, which many agencies have, including ours, and that's such an important. It's a great way for kids to be of service to the community as well, but you can also almost view it as a recruitment tool.
Sure, introduce kids to policing.
Yeah, absolutely, and all the things that go along with it. And they get terrific exposure to the world of law enforcement so they can make informed career choices.
Well, an experience like this can motivate a career or shape a career for somebody who's already in law enforcement. We heard from Brittany's 5-year-old who she interviewed that just pulled at our heartstrings. But we also heard during the interview about a 5-year-old who attended the funeral who wants to be a police officer. And I found that poignant because as we heard from the memories shared about Lieutenant Allan, he was about 5 years old when he decided he wanted to be a police officer, and he carried that dream all the way through his life.
As I've said, this
it's calling.
Yeah, it's calling.
Yeah. You guys know this at a very young age. I've had many friends and family members who've been a part of the police department. Every single one of them I knew when we were young. This guy's going to be a cop. No doubt about it. You guys, you're something else. We thank you. We can't thank you guys enough.
And often a very good law enforcement officer. Another thing that we've seen as we watch this procession, you'll be able to see, it's not just police vehicles in line here. You'll see Marion County Sheriff's deputies. You'll see Indiana State Police. We were also told that you'd be able to see fire departments, emergency medical responders.
Sure, fire departments, EMS, and federal, state, and local officers. And I saw in one of the feeds from Banker's Life that some of our federal partners were in attendance, and then not to mention the officers that come in from literally all over the country.
Right.
We saw NYPD, Chicago PD, Dallas, Fort Worth, and a great many others.
Because you're all one big family.
Ultimately, it is. Regardless of what agency your badge or patch may say, you're still part of that family, if you will, that group of people that do what we do in service to the community and the larger public safety umbrella as well. Including fire, EMS, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention our telecommunicators.
Right, because they do a very tough job as well, no doubt about it. Dispatchers are something else, and they're going to play a key role here as this 1042 is read here in a little while, correct? They are the ones who deliver it.
And frequently that person is specially selected to do that for some honorary reason. And there'll be a backup there also, just in case for whatever reason they're not able to get through it. There'll be somebody standing by there to assist them if they for some reason they're not able to complete.
Emotional for them as well.
Oh, sure it is.
Now we changed video feeds here. You're looking at dash cam video from the procession route itself. You can see the lights flashing in the vehicle in front. Of course, they are in full funeral procession, so that's a great look exactly on the road following Lieutenant Allan's body.
Coming from one of those police agencies, we should mention. This is not from one of our vehicles in the procession. This is from one of the police agencies. They are helping us out, provide this video for you as we switch cameras and take a live look outside.
Lieutenant Allan will be very well remembered today and honored today. His grin in one of his police photos that we've seen so often is adorning billboards around the city. I've seen there's been paintings commissioned and then performed of him that are already outside of his squad car in Southport. I mean, he is very well remembered today. How do police departments continue to remember those that they've fallen years, days, months, even years after they passed?
One of those is maintaining connection and contact with the survivors, especially with his family. Chief Vaughn said it in his remarks that you're stuck with us now, and that's critical to maintain that connection. And Aaron was so well liked and respected. And speaking with many of the Southport officers about the day-to-day activities that he did, he would find out your style of policing or kind of what you brought to the table, and then make little suggestions or tweaks on how to improve that, on how to improve your walk as a law enforcement officer. That's a real gift to be able to make those improvements with your fellow officers, and not make it sound like you're saying you're not doing it right.
Right.
That wasn't what he was about. It was about just making these little tweaks and improvements based on his own experiences.
Yeah.
And we've all needed those mentors, those role models in our careers and walks as police officers.
For the average viewer out there who's watching, they're probably saying, well, policing is about what? Giving out tickets and arresting bad guys. No, it's not. It goes way further than that. Way further than that, especially in today's day and age where, and we were talking about this the other day, you wear many, many hats.
Well, yeah, and the traditional models of an officer stopping somebody for a traffic violation or whatever, I mean, that, their officers to do that,
Sure.
and it's an important part. Maintaining traffic safety is a critical part of what we do. But there's so much more to it, and even from when I started in 1983, it has changed and evolved in so many different ways. We're asked to do a lot. I remember the Dallas Police Department chief.
Last year, the 9 officers were shot. I believe it was 9, if I'm not mistaken. It was a number of them anyway.
Right, throughout the country at that moment. 5 Dallas area.
And then 4 in other areas.
Right. And, indicating the society asks a lot. And of them, that much is given, much is expected.
Right.
And, but, sometimes you're everything from marriage counselor to psychologist to, Band-Aid,
Sure.
putting a Band-Aid on a boo-boo for a young one. So, we wear many hats, and that's what we sign up for. Again, as I mentioned, it's a calling. It's something that we are truly called to if you're doing it right and well.
And Lieutenant Allan is a guy who did that right.
Oh, he did it well. Sure.
Gary, did you ever speak to Lieutenant Allan about his favorite part of policing, or something that would make him smile when he'd get up and go to work and do something that day?
Not directly with him, but I certainly did with his coworkers. And he, to a person, they just mentioned that willingness to help and support not only the community but within the department as well. Even to the point of reviewing police reports, and if there's some terminology or some way you could have written your report a little better, you'd make those suggestions, but not in a way that made it sound like you weren't doing it right.
Right.
In a way that was received well by his coworkers, and very much appreciated, actually. So, he was a very special officer and will be dearly missed there at Southport PD, but they will carry on that legacy well. They're a terrific crew down there.
I was going to say, how do you replace Lieutenant Allan in such a small department?
You don't. You can't. But you can carry on that legacy. You can think about, almost literally, hey, what would Aaron do here? And they'll be keeping that in their minds for quite some time.
When you look at the traits he developed, right, a compassionate heart. The phrase teddy bear, of course, is used synonymously with his name at this point. A compassionate heart. Also, taking a strong stance on legality and on appropriateness, and enforcing the laws in his community and protecting the people in his community. He develops these traits over these years of becoming a police officer to become the man that he was the day that he passed. And you think, how else can others develop that and follow in his footsteps, because he set such a great example?
Yeah, and I would say most officers feel like that and perform like that. Frequently what's visible, though, is when we are out there taking enforcement action. Again, that's why the community engagement parts of what we do are so critical now. And the fact that we're able to do those things more often, that's very, very important.
So we see the hearse go on by, and I think we just actually heard one of the people standing by say thank you. That's at Madison and Troy.
You see a sheriff's deputy as well on the right side of the screen who was in salute during that procession. And there's an American flag waving, catching its way into the frame every now and then. And you can see folks, as expected, lining the procession, giving their final goodbye and honoring Lieutenant Aaron Allan, who served the Southport community, but also anyone he came in contact with.
During this whole process, Gary, this past week and a half, I know we talked about the comments that the chief made and others who knew him. What about the people who didn't really know him, who got to know him because of the work that he did? We had a story earlier this week, I believe, by a man who, and I believe we heard it earlier during the memorial, that he came out and he knew that his battery wasn't working, he couldn't get to work, and he purchased a battery with his own money for this gentleman.
Sure.
Amazing. And now that gentleman says he possibly wants to get a tattoo to memorialize Lieutenant Allan.
And the battery's still working.
And the battery's still working.
We heard that note as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and law enforcement officers do that. There's somebody out there doing that right now.
Right. More often than you hear.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. And frequently that's done without, you don't say anything about it. You don't make any kind of a attention, gathering attempt. Those acts of kindness happen on a literally daily basis, hourly basis, I might even suggest, with law enforcement agencies throughout central Indiana, throughout the entire country. The way we do policing here of of, by, and for, by consent of the people. It's somewhat unique in the world, and it's. I've said the saying before. The police are the people, and the people are the police. Yeah. Meaning that the only authority we have is what the people give us by consent.
Sure.
Gary, thank you. For those of you just joining us, Gary Woodruff, of course, joining us, Deputy Chief in the Lawrence Police Department. We're so grateful for your insight. We do have team coverage today of Lieutenant Aaron Allan's funeral, which is now an hour past, and his procession down to Southport Police Department and then back up to Crown Hill Cemetery.
Yeah, our Nick Notario was actually outside the gates at Crown Hill Cemetery. We spoke to you a little while ago, Nick. What's the crowd out there right now, and what is it like as we speak to you here going into this hour?
Well, Phil, we've seen a few more people pull up outside the cemetery here, but things have really started to pick up inside. The bagpipe players are playing even more now. They were just tuning their instruments and are now practicing the song that they will be performing. But I want to show you, just moments ago, we had this carriage out here. I had mentioned a few minutes ago that what will happen when the procession ends outside of the cemetery here, you're going to have his casket, Lieutenant Allan's casket, will be put right here on this carriage. It'll be then brought up through the cemetery where he will be brought to his final resting place, but they are there wiping it down. They were fluffing kind of the frilly parts there on the bottom of the carriage, just getting it all nice and pristine for his final ride into the cemetery. Outside the cemetery, you still got this massive garrison flag, and what is going to happen as the procession comes to an end here, I'm going to step right out of the way so you can see it. They're going to come down 34th Street, come right toward the camera right there. They're going to go under that massive flag, where they're going to make their way, eventually stopping in front of the cemetery here. Now, we did just go down and talk to some people that are standing outside. There's a lot of people from Indianapolis, as you would imagine. No one that we talked to actually knew him, but they just wanted to show him respect. But we also chatted with a woman who traveled from Westfield. Her husband is actually an IMPD officer, and she brought her little ones here, and she's sitting out with them. And she felt it was important for her kids to see the love and support that Lieutenant Aaron Allan's family is receiving from the community out here. And off in the distance, the bagpipes have started to play once again as people here are preparing to make their way over here to end the procession outside the cemetery. So what's going to happen when they eventually do make it down here, they're going to come up right this way. They're going to stop right where we're standing. Motorcycles are going to line the space right here, and then that's right over here on the caisson is where they're going to transport his casket right onto that wagon right there. And you can see, if we keep moving the camera just over to your left there, we're going to move over. You got some horses that are making their way out. I don't know if these are the ones that are going to be involved on the casket ride, but you see some IMPD officers there bringing some horses as they make their way outside the cemetery. I had mentioned about 20 minutes ago, after the funeral service at Bankers Life Fieldhouse came to an end, we had around 100 officers make their way out here with their cruisers, their lights on, giving their final respects as they made their way inside the cemetery. It looks like this could be the horse that is involved. I'm not quite sure, but no one is riding it. But eventually they're going to have this thing loaded up, and this is where it will all come to an end. And as this thing gets closer, the procession gets closer to Crown Hill Cemetery, of course, we're going to stay out here, and we will keep showing you images, keep you posted, let you know what is going on here. And then, of course, when the procession makes its way here, you will see it right here. Back to you, Phil and Brenna.
Nick Notario live outside of Crown Hill Cemetery for us this afternoon. Nick, thank you very much.
Let's check in now with Brittany Lewis, who's live outside of the Southport Police Department. Brittany, good afternoon.
Hi, Brenna. Well, as you can see, the processional for Lieutenant Aaron Allan has now arrived at the Southport Police Department. These police squad cars started arriving here about 3 minutes ago, and I would say so far about 50 squad cars have gone by me, and all of them have been from different police departments across the state. When we were here earlier, we've been here now for about 4 hours. You know, people were out here talking, kind of sharing stories, talking with each other. A lot of these people are from Southport. They know each other. But as soon as that first squad car got here, it got very quiet. These people are driving past the Southport Police Department, past the memorial that has been growing for Lieutenant Allan, and also past a portrait of Lieutenant Allan. And I have seen several people wipe tears as they've gone by. There are, in addition to police officers driving the squad cars, many of them have family members inside their squad cars with them. And I have seen some of them get pretty emotional. As you can imagine, this is an emotional thing for any law enforcement family. But what will take place here once all of these squad cars pass by the police department here is Lieutenant Aaron Allan. They will stop here for him and for his final radio call. So what that means is a 1042 radio call. All of the radio traffic will go silent. A Marion County dispatcher will then relay the final radio call for Lieutenant Aaron Allan. And the Wayne Township Fire Department is here. They will be providing their speakers so that all of the people who have come here to pay their respects will be able to hear that final radio call. Something many people we've talked to said will be very emotional for them. Most of the people that I've been talking to did not know Lieutenant Allan, but heard about all the wonderful things he did. If they lived in Southport, they likely saw him drive by, wave at them. And then people from all over Indiana have come here to pay their respects, just to show his family, pay their respects for their family. So right now, as you can see, more police cars, squad cars are coming through. Right now, it looks like this is a line of IMPD squad cars. I'm not sure just how many squad cars are in this processional, but I can imagine that there are quite a few. So we will be here. We're going to stay here for this processional, for that final radio call. And as soon as we get word that that is going to be happening, we will come back to you guys.
All right, Brittany, thank you very much.